All right, guys, how's it going? Welcome into latest edition Black and Gold Breakdown, June 27th. Hey, again, less than a month away from training camp. If you're not already subscribed, do all that fun YouTube stuff. Oh no, we got to do the daily. What is it? The daily sub count, 1,150. So again, appreciate all the support over the past few weeks. And yeah, today going to be talking about the players I'm most excited to see training camp, preseason, and then obviously in the regular season as well. Um, but obviously in training camp, these are the guys that I'm going to have my eyes on very closely, and then in preseason, I'm very excited to see them in actual game action. It's been fun seeing all these guys, throughout OTAs and mini camp, but getting them on the field and seeing them play other teams and hit other players will be a lot of fun. So one of them, maybe the most excited that I am about any player this year is Payton Wilson. Seeing him throughout this process, it's very evident that the Steelers seem to have a good amount of trust in him already early on. If you look at the um, if you look at some of the things that they're already trusting him with doing, there was a situation. I want to say it was during OTAs where they had a team scrimmage, and they immediately trusted Wilson to be the dime linebacker when they went into a dime package. So having that early trust already in him is tremendous to see. And I asked him about it too, and he incredibly ecstatic about it. And seeing this linebacking core as a whole, Patrick Queen's another one, and I'll talk about him in a minute. But Wilson, man, I loved him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and throughout the process of the draft and whatnot, I didn't write a ton about him because I just didn't see him even being, a potential guy that the Steelers could grab because, I figured, okay, he'll probably go at like the tail end of the first round, early second round will probably be the first or very at the minimum, a top 40 guy. So I didn't think that I didn't think that he would even be a possibility for Pittsburgh. And then obviously you go through the process of the draft, and the Steelers have all these guys just fall to them without having to move. They didn't have to move for Fatanu. They didn't have to move for Zach Frazier. They didn't have to move for Wilson. And then once you get to like pick number like 90, you're like, okay, Peyton Wilson's got to go here. 91, no, 92. And then obviously the Steelers take him 98. So since he's shown up, or since he's been drafted, going back and watching some of his college stuff at NC State, incredible closing speed, incredible smarts, high football IQ, really good in coverage. He has very good potential to be like an all-pro guy, especially in a defense that already has a bunch of studs in it. He can be the next in line for that. So I'm incredibly excited to see him during training camp, to see him on the field during preseason. Peyton Wilson, the most excited, or the Steeler I'm most excited to see. Patrick Queen is probably number two for a lot of the reasons that I just said about Wilson. And as Steelers fans, we know, like, hey, linebacker position has not been good in a very long So you remember a few weeks ago when I said how much I fucking hate when little things don't go right? Yeah, this is one of those instances. God damn. Oh man, now I'm gonna get fired up. I'm gonna get angry. I don't want to get angry. Oh, I hate when that happens. There's nothing more annoying to me than when I'm in the middle of like, whether it be something like this or when I'm writing up a piece and like I'll just have a random, oh, computer froze. Doesn't happen during streams too often. It's happened like once before since I started doing this. So batting average wise, we're chilling. But man, when it happens, oh, if only you guys could see me just like sitting here. I go into like Joe Pesci mode from Home Alone, where I just sit here and I'm like, motherfucker. That's basically what I turn into. Oh, I hate it. I hate it so much. So if you're watching on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're watching, apologies for the like minute long freeze over we just had there. Patrick Queen. That's what I was about to get into. Actually, no, we're going to do your comments real quick after the Payton Wilson stuff. Curious to see how well Beanie Bishop does. Also checking to see if I'm accident. No, you're good. You are good. Yeah, I think it was just for that one thing. So we're good. I think we're all cleared up. Again, sorry for accidentally banning you. That was very much an accident. So glad to see that you're back. Yes, Liv Morgan technology. Yes, of course it does. DLW, good to see you. George, I see you're in here too. Rel, everybody watching on YouTube, leaving comments. I appreciate you as always. So thanks for sticking through that like 1 minute delay. So Patrick Queen. I think the reason I'm most excited to see Wilson and Queen is because of the linebacker position and how not good it's been for the Steelers over the past decade or so. You know, ever since Ryan Shazier got hurt, they've really struggled at that position. It's been a lot of Sean Spence's and John Bostic's, Joe Schobert. Miles Jack was fine, but like, you know, he was much better in his second run, I would say, in terms of his overall play. But they haven't had that perennial, like, top-notch off-ball linebacker in a long time. And so now having two of them, really three of them, because Landon Roberts is still very good. But you got a guy like Patrick Queen, who's a star. Landon Roberts is very good, and you draft a guy like Payton Wilson, who has all the potential in the world to be very, very good. So I think that's the reason I'm most excited for that, is because they've just been so bad for so long at that spot. And we know the story with Patrick Queen. Very quick, good in coverage. A lot of the same traits that Payton Wilson has, Patrick Queen has. So I'm incredibly excited about those two in particular. Those are probably the two guys that I'm most excited to see what's going on. X, thanks for tuning in. You know, I put Justin Fields on the thumbnail as well because I'm obviously very excited to see Justin Fields. I'm excited to see Russ too. But in terms of this, you know, we've talked at length about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So I wanted to at least highlight a few guys that I haven't talked, you know, incredibly at length about, at least not in a while. So, but yeah, Payton Wilson and Patrick Queen are certainly, you know, the top two guys that I'm most excited to see as of right now. Nick Herbig's another one that I really, really want to see be a little bit more part of the rotation. I would like to see, obviously, TJ be on the field as much as possible. But if you want to rotate Nick Herbig and Alex Highsmith a little bit more, something that I would be pretty okay with. Again, it's not a knock on Alex Highsmith. He's good. Nick Herbig's also good. And I would like to see a little bit more of him on the field. So hopefully we get to see a little bit more of Herbig this year. Because anytime he was on the field last year, it felt like he was making a play, right? Look at the Jacksonville game, he forced a fumble. The Seattle game, he forced a fumble. So anytime that Nick Herbig was on the field, I sound like Brian Baldinger now because he loves Nick Herbig. If you follow Brian Baldinger on Twitter, you know how much he loves Nick Herbig. So I'm excited to see how they incorporate him a little bit more into the defense this coming year. Keanu Benton is another one. Most of these are defensive guys, but they have a lot of young talent on that side of the ball with Herbig and Keanu Benton. Keanu Benton had a really solid rookie year. And eventually he's going to be the guy who kind of takes, the baton from Cam Hayward. Obviously, Joey Porter Jr., and I saw somebody say Beanie Bishop as well. So, these are all guys that this is a young defense, a young team. It's full of guys in it. If you have anybody that you're excited to see, absolutely drop them in there. I see X says that excited to see Cam Sutton back. I am too. I think that he's going to be a really good addition to the secondary. And having that kind of guy where okay, we got a guy in the slot that we can count on. We got two guys on the outside that we can count on. And we got an all-pro safety on the back end. Good luck beating us. I think that's the mentality that they're going to go in with. Oh, by the way, arguably the best pass rush duo in the NFL, Keanu Benton and Cam Hayward on the inside. Like, their defense right now has no holes. There is not a spot that you can point at and say, ugh, they ain't very good there. And that is a tremendous place to be in. In June, where you can look at your defense and say, yeah, we're good. We don't need to bring anybody else in because we feel like we are good. Joey Porter Jr., Dante Jackson. Dante Jackson might not be a superstar cornerback, but it's very rare to have two stud cornerbacks. Dante Jackson's a good number 2 corner. Having a good number 2 corner opposite of a rising star cornerback in Joey Porter Jr., and then Cam Sutton in the nickel, plus having Darius Rush and Corey Trice and potentially Beanie Bishop all rotate in. Hey, that's a far cry from the likes of, James Pierre, right? So that's good. And then safety-wise, you bring in a guy like Deshaun Elliott, who is an upgrade over DeMonte Casey. Casey's obviously still on the roster, but having Minka and Elliott as the starters, with Casey being the third guy who will come in during 3 safety sets and sub packages. And then the linebacking room we already talked about, there isn't a hole on the Steelers defense. Hell, there's barely a hole on their roster. It's just at quarterback, it's just a giant question mark. I don't think we can say it's a hole necessarily because we right now just don't know how good Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are going to be in Pittsburgh. Wide receiver wise, we can probably say, yeah, that's a hole. Outside of George Pickens and maybe Roman Wilson, depending on how good he is in the slot, yeah. But there's only 1, maybe 2 spots that you can point at and say, okay, you got to get better there. And even at the quarterback spot, you can say, yeah, you could get better there. Cam Sutton, people seem to forget how good he was in our defense. Yeah, I know he's very good. And in the last season with Pittsburgh, they tried putting him more on the outside. They did that in Detroit too. And he's just a good slot corner. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. If a guy is good at something at one spot, then just keep him there. And it was weird because they had released Steven Nelson, and they had was it that year where they were just without a nickel corner and just refused to put Cam in the slot a lot. So the fact that they now have him back, that makes me feel pretty good about their secondary. And offense-wise, Like, yeah, it's going to be a young offensive line, but if you look at offensive line, especially like draft picks, more often than not, I mean, those are the most pro-ready guys. Offensive line and wide receivers. Like those are guys that can, translate pretty quickly. So I'm not too worried about Zach Frazier and Troy Fatanu adjusting quickly. And by the way, I think it was Mark Caboli of The Athletic reported that, yeah, Broderick Jones is, going to go into training camp as a starting left tackle, and then they're going to have Troy Fatanu and Dan Moore battle it out for the right tackle spot. Now, Dan Moore also did say that he doesn't like right tackle. He's not very good at it. So I think the writing's kind of on the wall. We're like, okay, they're going to make Fatanu, quote unquote, earn it, but I would be surprised if Fatanu isn't starting at right tackle week 1. Which, by the way, we talked about it on this very program. If they were to do something dumb and be like, actually, you know what, we're going to keep starting Dan Moore, then why the hell did you draft 2 tackles with your last 2 first-round picks if you're just going to keep starting Dan Moore? So it does seem like they're like, okay, you know what, we have these 2 guys. Again, they're going to make Fatanu, quote-unquote, earn it, but I think he'll win that job. Glad Cam Johnston, but I also hope we never have to see him. Well, I mean, you're gonna. Hopefully we see him less than what we saw Presley Harvin. Yeah, Cam Johnson, good punter. He's kicking the hell out of balls during minicamp and OTAs. Great dude too. I love Cam. Every time, we would pass each other, or he would like pass me in the facility. He'd always, give me a quick handshake and say, hey, what's up? Like, good dude. I like Cam a lot. So happy that that Pittsburgh went out and got him. And he's seen all your Bill Burr memes. I asked him, don't worry. And he's very aware of them. Want me to pull the video? Hold on. I think I have the video in here still. I might be lying, actually. Do I have the video? I might not have it. Rats. Well, it's if you go to my channel and go to my shorts, there's a short of him talking about the Bill Burr meme stuff. So go and watch that afterwards if you want to see it. Aiyuk in a Steelers jersey is who I'm most excited to see. I have completely just accepted that it's not going to happen. Is what it is. I think I'm now back to no more Brandon Aiyuk stuff. I think we've reached the point where, okay, they had their meeting. He had his meeting with the 49ers. And it's been reported that they're in a pretty good spot. We'll see if the extension gets done. I don't think he's getting traded this year. Do not see it happening. So I'm just kind of closing that book of hope. And I just don't think it's going to happen. I've been pretty consistent with that for the past few months after the draft. Where it's like, okay, if it didn't happen during the draft, there's no reason for it to happen now. So, yeah. For now, I'm just, unless something crazy happens again where more reports come out and it's like, oh, actually, Brandon Aiyuk, like that, I'm going to have to eat my words again and be like, okay, well, I guess we got to talk about Brandon Aiyuk again. Yes. Something on Monday now since Jarrett said no more Aiyuk. Maybe that's the secret ingredient. As long as I say no more Brandon Aiyuk talk, he'll do something to make sure that I have to talk about him. So, but again, if there is a guy, it could come out of left field because I know that they want a bigger name. It's pretty obvious. By the way, I switched around the helmets. So I got the Kelly green here. I moved the Buccaneers up, brought over the Bengals, put the Bills over here. Got the Silver Dome Seahawks moved up. So, yeah, I just ordered a new one. So that'll be here in a couple days. And that'll go right here. So, yeah, adjusting the look here. But, yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. If it was going to happen, I think it would have by now. So I think we can officially close that book. And again, this isn't me with any sort of like insider information on it. I know nothing that is happening right now. This is what I've said for the past couple months, where if it didn't happen during the draft, I don't see a reason why it would happen now. Because if I'm the 49ers, there's no reason why I would do it right now. Unless you're just blown away. Like, okay, we'll give you 3 first-round picks if there's a team dumb enough to do that. And okay, sure. But yeah, unless you're blown away by some crazy offer. I do wonder, and again, no insider information in terms of this, but like what it would take for them to do it like right now. Like if the Raiders called them up and were like, okay, how about this? We'll give you straight up like Max Crosby for Brandon Aiyuk and like, you know, something like that. And again, I don't think the Raiders would do that. This is just me spitballing as to what would make them do it. So, I don't know what it would take, but I think that the 49ers have no interest in trading Brandon Aiyuk because if they do, their offense is going to be much worse because he's definitively their best receiver. And they don't have any other. If they traded him, they'd be in somewhat of a similar spot that the Steelers are in right now. Okay, like, yeah, Deebo Samuel is a good player, but he's not a number 1 X receiver in an offense. So they'd be in a little bit better spot than Pittsburgh because they've got McCaffrey and they've got Kittle and they got Deebo. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan's a tremendous play caller and they got a good defense, but in terms of the receiver position, they would be in somewhat of a similar spot because they don't have that definitive guy that can, consistently win at the line of scrimmage and be a definitive one. There's no way Justin can beat Russell out in camp. I don't think there's no way. I would be surprised if it happened, though. Because, again, we're going into this. We went into offseason program. Mike Tomlin saying, yeah, Russell's on the pole position. And in order for Justin Fields to take that spot, he would have to look incredible while Russell Wilson also looked bad. And it's hard to look bad in like camp and whatnot. So I don't think it's impossible that Fields beats him out, but I would be surprised. I think that Russell will go into the season as a starter. And I think that if he doesn't meet the expectations that the Steelers have, then sure, they would be in a spot where they could say, okay, let's see what we have in Fields. He wants paid, then will if he holds out, the price goes down. Not necessarily. Because the 49ers can just say, okay, well, you can hold out all you want. There's plenty of guys that have held out throughout camp and whatnot and eventually showed up. A lot of it's just to make a point. It's very rare that you get like a Le'Veon Bell case. I don't think we're going to see a Le'Veon Bell case with Brandon Aiyuk. If he wants to hold out throughout the duration of camp and not show up until, the week of the season starting, okay. But no, I would bet top money he's not going anywhere. I think that Brandon Aiyuk is staying in San Francisco, at least for this season. I think it would be smart for them to get an extension done. And if they do, that's good for them. But my guess is that they get a deal done with Aiyuk, and then after this season, they'll trade Deebo. Don't they have Pearsall? Pearsall, he's more of a slot guy himself. He has a little bit more outside versatility, sure, but he's predominantly a slot guy at Florida. They very much reached for him. He was projected mid-day 2, and they took him end of round 1. I'm sure Kyle Shanahan will find a way to use him, but Ricky Pearsall isn't replacing Brandon Aiyuk. He's not giving you nearly as much as what Brandon Aiyuk gives you. I'm sure Steelers fans will have a nice calm reaction to Russ throwing to DK. Yeah, and Mike McDonald's talked pretty highly about DK Metcalf, so I don't think that one's going to happen either. It's not impossible, sure, but I would be pretty surprised. Again, I think that whoever does get brought in, it'll be one of those names that we've already talked about, like a Traylon Burks, John Mechie, or someone out of left field, like a Chris Godwin, someone of that caliber. So if Russell plays good, when does Fields play? Probably doesn't. I think that they'll have a Justin Fields package. I think it'll be between 5 to 10 plays a game that they'll throw him on the field. In like RPO type situations where he can either run or throw. But if Russell plays well, then he's your starter. I think that, like I said, I think there will be some sort of package for Fields, but if Russell's playing well, then there's no reason to take him out. But regardless, I think we'll see Fields on the field in some capacity. Mostly because it just makes too much sense to not, right? Like if you have a guy like that, find a way to put him on the field, especially in this offense. It just makes sense. So I would be surprised if we don't see him in any capacity, because I think we will, especially like inside the red zone. Like Russell's very good in the red zone, don't get me wrong. But if you can have that type of, I mean, hell, maybe they do something like where they have both of them on the field at one time. I think that would be neat, especially like inside the 10. Have Fields line up behind Wilson, run a little pitch, and do something where you got blockers for him if he wants to run, and have one or two guys run routes, and if he can throw it to him, then throw it to him. Stuff like that. But again, if Russell plays well, yeah, then he's going to be the starter. And if he struggles, then we'll start having those conversations of, okay, when are we going to see Justin Fields become the starter? And it's very much possible that we do have those conversations. I mean, both of those guys aren't with their former teams for their respective reasons. But I will say this about Fields. I'll say it with a caveat. Had they not acquired the Panthers' first-round pick the previous year in that trade where the Panthers moved up to the number 1 overall pick, then maybe Justin Fields is still there, because then they wouldn't have been in a spot to take Caleb Williams. It's not as if Fields was horrible last year, but it was just a situation for the Bears where they said, okay, you know what, we can reset our quarterback contract timeline, and it would just feel good to have a fresh start altogether. Because again, they're bringing in Shane Waldron as a new offensive coordinator, so now they just kind of go in fresh. With Denver, I mean, that was just a match that didn't work with Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. And even then, Russ still played pretty respectable. And again, if you have any guys that you're particularly excited about seeing, you can drop those in the comments, and I will address those. Jaylen Warren's another one for me. Because again, I mean, you guys know how I feel. I think that Jaylen Warren is the superior running back. So I'm excited to see how they utilize him, how much they utilize him, and what those carries look like. What are your thoughts on the Steelers getting Mechie or Jacoby Myers? Thought I'd throw out some new names. Jacoby Myers is kind of a fun one. That's one that hasn't really been talked about too much. He's what? Vegas, right? And who else do the Raiders have behind him? I mean, obviously Devontae's the number 1, but outside of him, I don't know who all they have in Vegas that's really going to be able to hold down the fort at receiver. So they have Devontae and Jacoby Myers. Then they brought in Michael Gallup, and Jalen Guyton. So theoretically, that could be possible. They have Trey Tucker there as well, who they took in the 3rd round last year. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty solid theoretical name to throw out. And look, if they can get a Jacoby Myers, then I'm cool with that. He's another one of those guys. Like we talked about Brandon Cooks on here before. I mean, that's another one. Like, hey, cool. Doesn't make a lot of sense for Dallas though, because outside of CeeDee Lamb, then they really wouldn't have anybody. But at least with the Raiders, you can point to at least 3 other guys that would make some sense, and they'd have a little bit of depth there. At least Zach Frazier could bring stability at the center position. Hey, he's got a low bar to clear. Mason Cole was bad. I think Mason Cole's still unsigned, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I saw him sign anywhere else. Let me check. I'm pretty sure he's still a free agent. Doesn't say on the Wikipedia page. So he hasn't been picked up by anybody yet. So yeah, he's got a low bar to clear. If Russ or Justin do well this year, how long would the Steelers have to sign either one to a contract after the season ends, and why wouldn't either one test free agency? Well, if you're Justin Fields, like let's go with Russell Wilson first. If you're Russell Wilson and you put up similar numbers to what you did in Denver, and the Steelers play well and they win 11 games, get to the playoffs, I mean, if you're Russell Wilson, you can look at that and say, well, I want X amount of money. And if you're the Steelers, you can say either, okay, we'll give you, a 2-year deal with an option after this year. You say, okay, we feel confident in that. Or if he asks for too much money and you're Pittsburgh, you'd say, well, no, we're not going to give you that much. And I'm sure that there would be a team that would, cough, cough, the Raiders. And it would be similar with Justin Fields. Now, if you're Justin Fields in that situation, like let's say that we don't see Justin Fields really start any games. If you're Justin Fields, like there's going to be teams in 2025 that would pursue Justin Fields to similar to what Mitch Trubisky was, right? Because after he left Chicago, he had, a rehab year in Buffalo where he was just Josh Allen's backup for a year and then got signed by the Steelers and was the starter week 1. I think it would be a similar situation to that where, former first-round pick, doesn't pan out with the team that drafted him, has a rehab year with a good organization, and then goes somewhere else with the chance of being a week 1 starter and trying to, get their career back on track. Now, if you want to reverse the situations and say that Russ doesn't play well and eventually they give the keys to Fields and he plays well, then it would be, the same situation where, okay, Justin, we want to keep you here. Here's what we are offering you. And if he likes it, then he'll stay. And if he still wants to test free agency, then okay. So, but they're not going to, like, knowing Omar Khan, I mean, he's not going to, overpay just to keep him there. Especially if you're going to spend a lot of money, like why not just, and I've talked about this on here plenty as of late, if you're going to spend money, why not, up the ante a little bit and go get Dak? Now, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields aren't going to garner, $55 million a year. But if you're going to spend money on a quarterback, I mean, they have the money to do it. So it just depends on how they perform and what those set of circumstances will look like once free agency does come for each of them. So last time a receiving core was made mostly up of receivers we didn't draft. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute. Because even in the AB years, you had Marcus Wheaton, who they drafted. You had Sammy Coates for a minute, who they drafted Eli Rogers. There would be like the occasional like Darius Hayward-Bay, who was a depth guy. Jericho Cotchery had a nice year. They didn't draft him. Lance Moore came in, was like the 4th receiver. Ryan Switzer for a minute. So yeah, that's a good point. I haven't thought of that. So even then, like Hines and Plax were both drafted. Santonio was drafted. Cedric Wilson was brought in from the outside. So yeah, I mean they usually have like the occasional guy. Right now though, like all these guys that they brought in aren't all going to make the team. I will say that. Like Scotty Miller, Quez Watkins, Van Jefferson, I would bet good money not all three of them will be on the roster to start the season. They could be on the practice squad, but I don't think all of them will be on the roster. Last time the Steelers brought in a receiver that led them in receiving yards, World War II is going. Is that a real stat? Like all of their receiver? I mean, holy hell, I would believe that, yeah, because like AB, obviously Hines Ward, Stallworth, and Swan were both drafted. Pretty sure Yancey Thigpen was drafted by the Steelers. Troy Edwards, I think, was drafted by the Steelers. Yeah, that might be legit. Yeah, again, they don't make like too many like big splashes in terms of like receiver signings. Even these guys, like none of these are like big splashes. They're, depth guys. Whoever they bring in to be the number 2, hopefully they can end up being a splash of some sort, opposite of Pickens. But yeah, that is a good point. Never thought of it that way. Gotta fly. I don't know if you can see that on screen or not. Ooh. Okay, whatever. Let's take a couple more questions, comments before we get on out of here near the 40-minute mark. But this is the most like excited I've been going into a season since, I don't know, since 2018. Because it was pre-injury Ben. And like even when he came back, like I was very excited, obviously, because we had a whole year without Ben. And they started off the year incredible, went 11-0, but things fell apart at the end. I didn't expect them to go 11-0 to start the year, but I was hoping that Ben would be, solid. And he was still good, but there was a lot of questions around that. Like going into 2018, they had just been 13-3 the year before. Ben was still really good. Obviously, like Bell and Brown were all still there. Like that was the last time I was like this excited for a season. How do you think preseason games get split between quarterbacks? I think we'll see a fair share of both of them. How they're going to do it, I don't know. If they want to go Russ in the first quarter, Justin in the second. Or if they want to do, 3 drives for Russ, 3 for Fields, go that way. Like I think we're going to see both of them a very good amount, especially in the dress rehearsal game. Like they might just rotate quarters that game. Like they might give Russ the first half and give Fields the second half. And in the third game, I will be intrigued to see if they don't already have like, okay, we know Russ is going to start, so we're still going to give him like a drive or two, but So I would expect to see both of them a ton. Maybe see Kyle Allen in like, the mid to late fourth quarter, maybe a little bit of John Reese Plumlee, but I think they're going to be really focused. I do think it's a legit competition, but it's a competition that's Russ's to lose. And as long as Russ looks, par for the course, then he'll win. But I think that they're treating it very much like, okay, we're going to give Justin an ample opportunity to show us like, hey, I can be the guy, but tie goes to the runner in this situation and Russ has pole. So I think it'll be legitimate, competition reps. And we're going to see a fair share of both of them in the preseason. Omar Khan is here, so the Steelers can change with the times, and now it's a passing league. Will also help our run game immensely. Yeah, and I've been pretty critical of the Steelers as of late because it felt like the game was passing them by. Your game plan going into games is, okay, we're just not going to let them score a lot. You can do that against bad teams. You can do that against the Titans. You can do that against the Deshaun Watson Browns. You can do that. They limited the Browns in both games last year because their offense sucked. But then once you play real teams, you get the piss beat out of you. They went into the game against Buffalo and be like, okay, let's just try to slow down Josh Allen. Okay. Good luck with that. Do you think you can slow down Josh Allen? You got to have somebody that can go toe to toe with him. In 1941, player was Don Looney. That is remarkable. Yeah, I'm gonna go to this timestamp and I'm gonna tweet this later. That's incredible. Yeah, I mean we talk all the time about how good the Steelers are at drafting receivers historically, but this is something that never even crossed my mind. That's awesome. Absolutely crazy. But all right, I think we're gonna call it there. Thank you guys for watching. Again, apologies for the little minute hiccup at the beginning of the show. Appreciate you guys watching. Again, very excited about what's to come. Payton Wilson, the guy I'm most excited to see throughout the entire team. Patrick Queen is a close number 2. Keanu Benton, looking forward to seeing what he can do in year 2. And obviously Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, new quarterbacks. Excited to see what they'll bring. But it's a year full of anticipation. Last year, I didn't really feel anticipation. I felt like, okay, hopefully this doesn't go so bad, but unfortunately it did. And even then, they still somehow ended up in the playoffs. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. Am in talks. We are figuring out a date for it, but former Steeler coming on the show, which would be very fun. We're just figuring out a date in which to do it. So once we do figure out the date and time for that, I'll put something about it in the community tab to give you guys a nice little heads up. So that's coming to fruition. Again, we just trying to work out a date for it. It'll be in the near future though. So we'll let you guys know about that. You can go watch the most recent episode of The Pump Fake. Me and JP Acosta previewed the AFC South. Trevor Lawrence is going to be a dad. Congratulations to Trevor Lawrence. And what else do we got? Follow the written stuff over at Behind the Steel Curtain, SB Nation's dedicated coverage to the Pittsburgh Steelers, of which I am the deputy editor of the site. So go and read all of this stuff over at Behind the Steel Curtain, as well as all my written stuff at USA Today. And yeah, be back in a couple days. So all things Pittsburgh Steelers. And again, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please do so. And I will see you guys on the next Black and Gold Breakdown. Have a good night.